Hello, hello, and welcome back again this week. Oh my goodness, Simone, this is what our
It's
fourth
our
week.
third one,
I think it's our fourth
right?
one.
Is it
Yeah,
4? Oh,
I
yeah,
think
it's the last week
so.
of
I think
April.
so. So yes, again, we are coming back talking about teen girls. We work
Mhm,
with a lot of girls throughout the year in our work with college advising, and you with coaching volleyball.
mhm.
And the conversations we have been having have really been around wellness and really thinking about, how do we help parents out there who have daughters and really be able to support their girls through what can be sometimes a bumpy time.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so, yeah, today we're going to talk about a topic that, I think we had a lot of trouble even with coming up with the title for this.
Yeah,
So instead of saying just body image, it's body language and image. And
mhm.
I'll have you kick us off because you're talking with girls about this as we speak, in
Yeah,
your program. So go ahead and get us started.
I think so before I dive into what I speak with my girls about, I guess I wanna ask you if you can remember kinda your first conversation maybe you had with your mom or your sister around body language or body image?
Well, that would be kind of a hard question for me to answer because my mom was part of the silent generation, and she had me at an older age, which meant that we didn't have those kinds of conversations. And so they are
Really?
different than conversations I may have with my daughter, but for my mom of that generation, we didn't have that. And I don't
Right.
know if there's some of you who are listening who are similar in terms of, having that gap in generationally.
Right.
So maybe that's a question you have to answer.
Well, I guess for me, it was a little bit different because I
Mhm.
started playing sports pretty young, and
Right.
so body language well, I'll say even before I played sports, I feel like that was a conversation that was had
Hmm.
pretty early on because,
Yeah.
as girls, they're always like, "You need to act like a lady and you need to be polite,"
Right.
and even in
Hmm.
sports, it's still very important because it's a very high percentage of just communication between people.
Yeah.
But even
Yeah.
now, when I have the conversation with my kids, like, it's super important for recruitment because, you can tell if a
Huh.
kid's gonna be good at volleyball or if they have room to improve in less than
Right.
5 minutes. But when college coaches go to these tournaments and they're recruiting, they're
Mm.
looking at how you're celebrating, how you're interacting with your teammates on the court, your
Hmm.
reaction to getting subbed out, or after a game, are you talking to your
Right.
parents? Are you talking to your teammates and your coaches?
Hmm.
Um, and so from a recruitment standpoint, it's super
Right.
important, but then,
Hmm.
it also can get touchy and dangerous in terms of body image and the people you surround yourself with and who makes you
Right.
feel good.
Right. Right. And that's a real critical distinction. And I really learned about the importance of body language, I feel, through my studies in college. And my major was in linguistics, and we actually had a course around body language. And so that was, I think, when I first started to think about it and think about it in a more intentional way. And one of the things that I would say is probably happening with our teen girls is they may not realize how they're presenting themselves in terms of their body language. And that's what makes that such an important conversation for you to have with them as part of your
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, that conversation I have with them is always really important because they
Hmm.
aren't aware of it all the time. And
Right.
so even in games when I'm
Hmm.
coaching and I'll tell them like, you know, like shoulders back, chin up, and you see them all go because they don't even realize that they're like hunching their shoulders and they look like the world is ending. And I'm like, you guys look miserable. And you know, you
Yeah.
get so caught up in like what you're focused on.
Right.
But you know, people are watching you and you know, you're getting
Mhm.
recruited and these things are important. And ever since I've been super on top of them with that since we started. And ever
Mhm.
since I get compliments on like how my
Yeah.
team is playing, they tell me like
Yeah.
regardless of you're winning or losing, like your team plays together, like they look like they're having such a good time. I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, because I'm about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we first started talking about this, Simone, I thought it was going to be more about body image, and you were just like, "No, that's kind of touchy. We're going to talk
I
about
think,
body
well,
language as well."
I think they're both very
Uh-huh.
important. I think body language gets overshadowed a lot,
Mhm.
whereas, you know, we see a lot of things about, you know, body image and body
Right.
positivity more often, especially in
Yeah.
the media. And
Mhm.
so, no, I think we can definitely talk about that too. And I think body image can look different, right? And I think, like, so for me specifically, my
Mhm.
body image issues were really much surrounded with my height. And
Mhm.
so from a very, very young age, people were always making comments on like my body and like how tall I am, things like that. And so I was very
Mhm.
aware of my body all the time. And even
Mhm.
now to this day, like when I'm going out with my friends, like my outfits kind of are surrounded by how tall I want to be today. Like how many comments do I want to deal with being out today? No, really. And like that's
Yeah.
tough because it's like, why do I have to be
Uh-huh.
so body aware like that? Like what 2-inch
Hmm.
shoes I'm gonna wear so people
Yeah.
aren't constantly making comments about my appearance.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
draining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I really haven't thought about that because I'm pretty average height. But I think so many times as women, and I know especially for our girls, the weight is
Yeah.
really a big part of image and
Mhm.
just how many, pounds you have. And so
Right.
how does that come up in with your girls in volleyball, if at all?
I think at least specifically now, like when we
Mhm.
have our coaches training in general, that is just kind of the
Yeah.
first thing that they tell us to be mindful of. So especially like what we
Mhm.
say really matters. And
Right.
you know, things are different, you know, different body shapes and body types are more
Mhm.
celebrated now than they used to be, which I think is
Yeah.
also really important. But
Yeah.
making sure that if it is a conversation to be had, to make sure it's
Mhm.
brought up in a light that's beneficial to the kid and not just
Right.
because I think they should look a certain way, but like, are they healthy?
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
and even, you know, being mindful of, am I the one
Mhm.
to be having that conversation? Because I think people overstep a lot too.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's a good point because I think about that from when I was younger, and I want to share this because I know that sometimes we as parents may not be aware that this is happening. But I just remember when I was a teen and starting to develop in terms of, my body shape and size, a relative would make a comment about it. And
Mhm.
I just would shrink when I heard
Yeah.
that. And I didn't want to be around them at all because I felt so self conscious. And sometimes, as parents, we're not even aware of that. And having those conversations with our daughter about it, because you talk about, being out of line with having a particular conversation. And so I think it does put an onus on parents to have that
Mhm.
conversation, especially with our girls, and making sure that they are not held to any other standards, if you will.
Right. Mhm.
that make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think especially at that young age, oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing like and then, they're family
Yeah.
members, so it
Yeah,
stings differently, if that makes sense.
it
I
does.
actually recently saw this video about this, woman who was very basically
Mhm.
teaching her kids to, like, say no and
Yeah.
feel like they don't have to engage with family members when they don't want to,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
that was really interesting because I always remember thinking, like, your older family members, you always have to have a
Yeah.
certain level of respect, which you should, but there are
Yeah.
always also those people who you don't necessarily feel comfortable around, and
Mhm.
I think it's important for girls
Yeah.
especially to know, like, if someone's making you uncomfortable, like,
Right.
what that feels like, and, like, you shouldn't be
Exactly.
afraid to say something about it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
And say something about it to, your mom, your
yeah,
dad, or another trusted adult. But
mhm.
sometimes I don't think I ever talked to my mom about it.
Yeah, no, I don't think
So
I did
yeah.
either.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, how do you think the girls receive it in terms of talking with them about body language, body image?
I think it's definitely an eye opener because, like what I was saying before, especially with TikTok and
Mhm.
Instagram and just the media in general, there's just a lot
Mhm.
of
Right.
body image conversation. So, like, that is
Hmm.
just always in their face, whether it's coming from the media, coming from friends, coming
Right.
from family. It's a topic that's
Hmm.
just very much front of
Right.
in front of their face. And so
Yeah.
when body language comes into the picture, they have to think about they have to have a different kind of
Mhm.
self-awareness
Yeah.
um, that is not being portrayed in the media. And so, at
Hmm.
first they're all worried about their skin and, their
Yeah.
nails and their hair. And then kind of to
Hmm.
add that extra layer of
Yeah.
like what's the face you're making when
Hmm.
you have a bad play or somebody says something that's
Yeah.
rude or something like that.
Right.
And then even on the flip side, I think they're starting
Hmm.
to pay attention to people differently as well. And so
Yeah.
reading people, like what are people saying non-verbally, things like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you think
Well,
it's changed too? Like even just like in the
uh-huh.
media, I know how it's portrayed, things you
Mhm.
notice since you've been younger.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's definitely totally different
Mhm.
nowadays. And the instantaneity of it is, I think, makes it more intrusive and
Yeah.
unable to avoid it.
Mhm.
So that would
Yeah.
probably
Just very in your
be the
face.
biggest difference. Yeah, that's really
Mhm.
different, very different. So yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I am I was looking forward to this conversation. I'm glad we
Yeah,
had it, and I'm hopeful
me
that
too.
some of you who are watching got a nugget out of what we shared in terms of just talking about this and talking about it in a conversational way that oftentimes we don't get a chance to do as parents, or sometimes, talking about it as it relates to, our children. And so you and I, as I mentioned at the outset, are talking with girls every day, every day in some form. And we hear some of the trials that they're going through, some of the struggles, and always seeking ways to really bring in that wellness component and make sure that they feel supported. So I want to thank
Yeah.
everyone for joining us. Were you going to say something else, Simone?
No, I just like everything you
Mhm.
said was just very on point. And every single day, even when I'm not necessarily thinking about it, I
Uh-huh.
find that it comes up a lot. Just
Yeah.
somebody's always making a comment, or I'm
Hmm.
trying to protect my kids in some way
Yeah.
related to everything you just
Hmm.
said. And so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Okay. Awesome. So we look forward to coming back again. We'll be coming back next week to have this conversation. But also, in the meantime, I want to invite you all to check out College Prep Made Easy. It is going to be coming up in the next couple of weekends, and we are going to have an amazing time. If you have a teen who's 9th, 10th, or 11th grade, we invite you to join us. It's a half-day training where you're going to get all of the tools and tips needed to really make a difference in terms of helping your teen with getting in and getting money for college. So we look forward to seeing you next time.